Hello, my name is Kiri McCoy, and this is my final video for working Cowhorse. This is DLL Bosscat, a registered quarter horse, and his nickname is Monster. This is his AQHA papers, and he was bred at a ranch in Wyoming. Monster is a 7-year-old quarter horse who just monstrously wants to please you. He has 2 full years of training under his belt, 1 year of reining training, and another year of working on a cattle ranch. He is an intermediate level horse and is a touch button horse, but gosh does he have a lot of heart. He's also a beautiful mover and has a strong presence. Any person would be lucky to welcome him into their herd. We train these horses under the TQA guideline. TQA stands for Training Quality Assurance, and our goal is gaining the training trifecta, which is foundation, task completion, and temperament. This is the TQA score sheet, and it's how we score our horse on what we are working on. The left side is foundation, and the right side is temperament. We score them between -3 to +3. -3 being they still need work, and +3 meaning they've got it. This is Monster's score sheet, and he had a few negatives at the beginning, but he's a well-trained horse, so by the end of it, it was all positive. And what I will be showing you for this actual video is the TQA warm-up, which is groundwork and riding, completing the 4 stages and having horizontal and vertical direction. Right here, I am asking for horizontal direction and stage 1. Horizontal direction is when the slack is taken out of the reins, the horse puts slack back into the reins with suppleness through the pole and loin. And stage 1 is when you stop the inside front foot and walk the other feet forward around it. I gave him a +2. For stage 2, I gave him a +2, and stage 2 is when the hindquarters are pulling the horse in a reverse motion. And this is stage 3, which is lateral movement of the front and hind feet together. I gave him a +2 for both sides. Throughout all these stages, we are looking for willing submission. Willing submission is after the initial cue, the horse performs the task on a loose rein with no leg pressure. It is the horse's idea. For stage 4 in both directions, I gave him a +1 because he's a bit lazy about it on the ground. But stage 4 is when you stop the inside hind foot and walk the other feet forward around it. And if you haven't noticed, I always ask for stage 1 before and or after any of these, so he's always looking at me and understanding that I am his release spot. For flagging in both directions, I gave him a +2, and flagging is when we put the pressure up and expect them to turn their body towards us. He knows this job pretty well at this point, so very quickly he will turn his body to me. For saddling, I gave him a +3 because he will stand there ground tied. It's important for horses to take saddling as a positive experience, so then they always experience it as positive and are always ready to work. For bridling, I gave him a +2 because he's relaxed and he doesn't try to get away from the bit or anything. Next, we do all the same stuff in the bridle with the expectation they will do just as well. I gave him a +2 for both horizontal direction and stage 1 here. Here, Monster is showing the great example of horizontal direction and the perfect C that we are expecting them to do. He's super soft and never ever pulls at the reins, which I like to see. Now we are back to stage 2 in the bridle, and I gave him a +2 here. Now we are back to stage 3 in the bridle, and in both directions, I gave him a +2. And I always make sure to ask for stage 1. Finally, we are back to stage 4, and I gave him a +2 because he was a bit more awake now and he had better movement moving his shoulders across. Now here's a really good exercise for horizontal direction. The horse can't see exactly where you are, so it has to respond to rein pressure, so it's almost like you being on top of them. It is great to do right before getting on, and here, just making sure that he's comfy on both sides. Now I'm going to hop on, making sure that I'm holding my reins in my left hand. Now that we are on their back, we don't just walk off. We first check their horizontal direction standing, making sure that we have their brain. For this, I gave him a +2. Now we can start warming up our horses at a walk. And right there, I am just picking up and seeing how he responds to the pressure. The expectation is for him to drop his head and putting slack back into the reins. For horizontal and vertical direction at a walk, I gave him a +2. Right now we are doing a horizontal direction, which is a circle, and he's doing it very nicely. I'm asking for a little bit and then giving nice releases when he softens. After I am happy with the circles in those directions, I then switch directions and go back to working on vertical direction. Vertical direction is the up and down movement and breaking the pole vertically. Nose should be perpendicular to the ground. Now I am back to doing horizontal direction with as little leg pressure and rein pressure as possible. I really want it to be his idea. And he's doing this really nicely, and I'm always making sure that I'm looking at the same spot too, so I keep my circle nice. And right here, I'm going to prepare for a stop at the walk, and I give him a +2 for that. After gaining horizontal and vertical direction at a walk, we then move on to the trot. And right there, I'm really asking for him to pick up and use his vertical direction. If necessary, I will use 2 hands to make sure that I'm getting the circle that I want. But always making sure to have soft hands is very important. In both of these directions, I give him a +2 because he's really good with having just a loose rein and moving out, but at the same time, I am still able to pick up and he is not trying to rear his head up or anything. He's staying soft in my hands. For his stop, I gave him a +2, and my rein should have been much shorter at that point. Next up in the TQA warm-up is the lope, and I really love to see when I can just have a super loose rein and my horse is keeping his head nice and steady, and then when I do pick up, he does still respond with a nice soft head and body. And I once again gave him a +2 for horizontal and vertical direction. Monster is a really well-trained horse. And for his stop, I gave him a +2. It is important to set up a horse correct when you ask for a lope as well. Making sure that their body is aligned, it makes it much easier for them to go into the correct lead. In this direction as well, I gave him +2 for both horizontal and vertical direction. We're also really focusing throughout this warm-up on the fact of moving them quicker and slower, being able to really set their body up. And right there, he's really dropping his head nicely and moving out really nice. So I'm going to ask for a stop right there. And that one I gave a +2. And now that we're warmed up, we are back to the stages, making sure that we're really able to move their bodies in all directions before we start on our actual lesson of the day. And I give him a +3 for this because he's just really smooth and really soft in the saddle. Next is stage 2, and I give him a +2 for this because you really don't have to ask too much for him to move back. Next, I'm going to go into stage 3 and I'm going to do a side pass. And in both directions, I'm giving him a +2. He really crosses his legs over well and keeps his head nice and set. So on the ground, he is a bit lazy about this, but the stage 4 will eventually turn into your pivot, and I give him a positive 3 because he really stops that back hind foot and moves his body well around him. My next goal for our pivot is using less reins and leg. Now that our horse is finally warmed up, we can go into the task completion, which is actually what we are working on this day. And what we did was walking into phase 1 and standing and roping. And I gave him a positive 3 for this because he lined up perfect and then backed up perfect. And that is it. Thank you for watching.